Well, I see the transfer of the material that was in my office, in my offices. I should have done that. If I go back, I didn't have the responsibility to that. That was my staff was supposed to do that, and they referenced that in the report. And my staff did not do it in the way that, for example, I didn't know how half the boxes got in my garage until I found out staff gathered them up, put them together, and took them to the garage in my home. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. It was in my house. It wasn't out in, like in Mar-a-Lago in a public place where, and none of it was high classified. Didn't have any of that red stuff on it. You know what I mean? Around the corners? None of that. And so I wish I had paid more attention to how the documents were being moved and where. I thought they were being moved to the archives. I thought all of it was being moved. That's what I thought. Now, what was the last part of your question?
Whether a special counsel should have been appointed in this case and in the case of your rival president, former president.
I think a special counsel should have been appointed. And the reason I think a special counsel should have been appointed is because I did not want to be in a position that they looked at Trump and weren't going to look at me, just like they looked at the vice president. And the fact is they made a firm conclusion. I did not break the law, period. Thank you all very, very much. The hostage negotiation. Look. I'm of the view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in the Gaza Strip has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. Let them make them part of the Middle East and recognize them fully in return for certain things that the United States would commit to do. And the commitment that we were proposing to do related to two items. I'm not going to go in detail, but one of them was to deal with the protection against their arch enemy to the northwest, northeast, I should say. The second one, by providing ammunition and material for them to defend themselves. Coincidentally, that's the time frame when this broke out. I have no proof what I'm about to say, but it's not unreasonable to suspect that the Hamas understood what was about to take place and wanted to break it up before it happened.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to get everybody to hold for a moment.
Chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Nadler, for an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you have such information, such admiration for the president that you allowed him to take the first 10 minutes of this hearing. Mr. Chairman, House Republicans may be desperate to convince America that white conservative men are on the losing end of a two-tiered justice system, a theory that appeals to the MAGA crowd but has no basis in reality. But your comments today make me wonder if you have read the special counsel's report at all. Her report does help us draw a distinction between President Biden and Donald Trump, just not the one you want. Two distinctions, actually. First, the report is clear that, quote, at no point did the special counsel find evidence that Mr. Biden intended or had reason to believe the information would be used to injure the United States or to benefit a foreign nation, close quote. With respect to the classified documents found in President Biden's possession, quote, the decision to decline criminal charges was straightforward, close quote. And with respect to the special counsel's investigation.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute that. Good morning, people, patriots, whoever you consider yourself to be. We are in Morning Coffee. It's Tuesday, and I figured I'd come on here and we would listen and see. Make sure I got everything going right.
Cooperated completely, and the decision to decline criminal justice,
Good morning, Big B.
charges was relatively straightforward. In short, to borrow a phrase from the last administration, the Hurry report represents the complete and total exoneration of President Biden.
making
How
sure
does that
everything
record
is working
contrast
this
with
morning.
President Trump, the documents he retained, and the criminal charges pending against him in Florida? We know that Trump deliberately took large amounts of classified information from the White House. He has admitted as much, occasionally pretending that he classified this information without telling anyone on his way out the door. We know that he stored that information around Mar-a-Lago in the craziest of places, on the ballroom stage, spilled across the floor of an unlocked closet next to the toilet. We know that he showed classified military plans to an author interviewing him at Bedminster. Quote, "As president, I could have declassified it," Trump says on an audio recording. "Now I can't, you know, but this is still a secret." Still a secret, close quote. So much for the declassification theory.
All right, so as you can see, they're already trying to make this about Trump. Jerry Nadler is doing what he's supposed to be doing, and still trying to draw some comparisons. But what we will see momentarily is Robert Hur basically dismantle all of the bullshit that Jerry Nadler is trying to spin this morning. And I'm not going to stay with this for the duration of the day, but I'm going to have some morning coffee. Like, share, subscribe, ring that bell so you can get the instant notifications. And let's just see what the heck they're talking about and how they're trying to swindle their way out of this.
Close quote. Why did the president charge former President Trump but not President Biden? Not because of some vast conspiracy, not because the so-called deep state was out to get him, but because former President Trump was fundamentally incapable of taking advantage of even one of the many, many chances he was given to avoid those charges. Which brings me to the second distinction this report helps us draw between President Biden and Donald Trump. Simply put, President Biden had the mental acuity to navigate this situation. Donald Trump did not. Much has been made of the special counsel's gratuitous comments about the President Biden's age. But let's set the context. After returning every classified document, after opening his home to federal investigators, while simultaneously managing the first hours of the crisis in Israel, President Biden volunteered to sit through a 5-hour interview with the special counsel. I believe, as is his habit, that President Biden probably committed a verbal slip or two during the interview. And I'm not sure any of that matters, because when the interview was over, Mr. Hur completely exonerated President Biden.
Why?
Then,
Why?
there is Donald Trump. What
Back to
kind of
Trump.
man bungles not one, but dozens of opportunities to avoid criminal liability? What must that say about his mental state? Here, too, the record speaks for itself.
One of the great
We
memories
have
of
to
all
listen to
time.
these
James
lying
Webb.
son of a
I don't
bitches.
remember the names. Don't remember the name.
Viktor Orban. Did anyone ever hear of him? He's the leader of Turkey.
By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley is in charge of security.
3 years later, how about that?
Did you actually have a one-on-one with Comey then?
And not much, not even that I remember.
Oh, so they're trying to say
We have
because Trump
languages
makes
coming into our country.
sarcastic
We have nobody
remarks
that even
is
speaks
something
those
like
languages.
old
They're
ass
truly
Biden.
foreign languages. Nobody speaks them. Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat it. Oh.
I have a really good memory. Your next wife was a woman by the name of Marla Maples.
That's right.
Do you recall what years you were married to Ms. Maples?
That's not like him being vice
It's called
president.
like up here, and it's called memory, and it's called other things.
So you don't remember saying you have one of the best memories?
I don't remember that.
And Putin, has so little respect for Obama that he's starting to throw around the nuclear word. You heard that, nuclear.
We have to win in November, or we're not going to have Pennsylvania. They'll change the name.
I talked to Putin a lot.
How much did you ask him that? I don't remember that. I saw that this morning. I don't remember asking him that question.
I have a good memory and all that stuff, like a great memory.
For 20 years, they were fighting ISIS. I defeated ISIS in 4 weeks.
And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won.
Them that caged.
That's right.
And
Say
you know
her
what?
name.
When I am, you're going to know it. You're going to be the first people. I know my people. You'll say, all right, Trump, you did a good job. Get the hell out of here. That's it.
I don't know what that was for.
That is a man who is incapable of avoiding criminal liability, a man who is wholly unfit for office,
Totally.
and a man who, at the very least, ought to think twice before accusing others of cognitive decline. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Herr.
Oh my
Thank you
goodness.
for illuminating a stark choice for this country in the months to come.
Yeah,
I
thank
look
you.
forward to your testimony, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer, for an opening
All
statement.
right, Comer, go ahead. Get
In
him.
August 2022, President Biden questioned in a 60 Minutes interview how anyone can be that irresponsible when asked about classified documents in the possession of former President Trump. But when President Biden said this, he knew that he had stashed classified materials in several unsecured locations for years, dating back to his time as vice president and even as a U.S. senator. President Biden, the White House, and his personal attorneys have not been honest with the American people about his willful retention of classified material and continue to hide information from Congress. President Biden's attorneys claim to have first discovered classified material at Penn Biden Center on November 2nd, 2022. However, President Biden and his lawyers kept it secret from the American people before the midterm elections. CBS News broke the story in January 2023, leaving Americans to wonder if the White House had any intention of ever disclosing that President Biden hoarded classified documents for years. One of my first actions after becoming chairman of the House Oversight Committee was to launch an investigation into President Biden's mishandling of classified documents. This investigation started before Special Counsel Herr was named, and what we found is alarming. Information obtained through multiple transcribed interviews conducted by the Oversight Committee contradict the White House's and President Biden's personal attorney's narrative about the discovery of classified documents at the Penn Biden Center. In fact, the real timeline began in the spring of 2021, not November 2022, as the White House claimed. Additionally, the classified documents were not kept in a locked closet, as asserted by the White House. We've also learned that 5 White House employees and a Department of Defense employee were involved in the early stages of coordinating the organizing, moving, and removing of boxes that were later found to contain classified materials. There's no reasonable explanation as to why so many White House employees were concerned with retrieving boxes they believed only contained personal documents and materials. Why did President Biden keep these specific documents in unsecured locations for years? Many questions remain, but now the White House is obstructing Congress as we seek the truth for the American people. We've subpoenaed former White House counsel Dana Remus to appear for a deposition to provide information to our committee, but the White House is seeking to block her testimony. We've also subpoenaed the Department of Justice for audio recordings and transcript of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Herr. These were due the morning of the State of the Union. Only this morning, a couple of hours before today's hearing, the Department of Justice finally provided the transcript of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Herr. The timing is not coincidental. Although we've had little time to review the transcripts, from what we have seen, it is clear that the White House did not want Special Counsel Herr's final report to be released. The White House has refused to be transparent with the American people about the president's mishandling of classified documents. And worse, they have appeared to have lied about the timeline, about who handled the documents, and even about the contents of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Herr. That is why today's hearing is important. Transparency is what we seek today, and we look forward to Special Counsel Herr's testimony. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Raskin, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan. There are just 3 basic points that all Americans need to understand about Mr. Herr's report. Number 1, the special counsel exonerates President Biden. The
Because
very
he's
first
too
line of the
old.
report says it all. Quote, "We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. We would reach the same conclusion even if Department of Justice policy did not foreclose criminal charges against a sitting president." Second, the report establishes that President Biden offered complete and unhesitating cooperation with the special counsel's investigation. The Justice
Yeah, but what he's not saying is he gave complete cooperation with the interview, but he didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He cooperated, but he didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And they're still trying to glance over the fact that he wasn't charged because he said PAPPA was too old. But see, after these idiots have their chance to try and put their spin on it, is going to come out and say the actual and factual. And we're going to be here for it.
Fight investigators, nor did he seek to redact a single word of Mr. Herr's report. He consented to the search of numerous locations, including his homes, and he did everything he could to cooperate, not obstruct. Third, Special Counsel Herr repeatedly emphasizes that President Biden's conduct contrasts sharply with that of former President Trump. Herr observes that unlike President Biden, quote, the allegations set forth in the indictment of Mr. Trump, if proven, would clearly establish not only Mr. Trump's willfulness, but also serious aggravating factors. He sets forth these points of difference in detail, quote, most notably after being given multiple chances to return classified documents.
Chappella, I'm going to go ahead and answer your question. Yeah, they all had all of this classified stuff, but there was only one person that was covered under the Presidential Records Act, and I will leave it at that because obviously you need to go educate yourself. No one else had the authority other than Trump to have the documents at the time. Pence wasn't president. Joe Biden wasn't president. Enough said.
And avoid prosecution, Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it, unquote. He returned only a portion of subpoenaed documents and deliberately withheld the rest. Unlike President Biden, Trump did not alert the National Archives or DOJ of the documents, nor did he turn over all the classified materials in his possession. He did not agree to sit down for a voluntary interview with the special counsel. He never consented to a search of his home. On the contrary, Trump suggested that his attorney hide or destroy evidence requested by the FBI and the grand jury.
We already know
Trump
they're
carefully
lying.
instructed his
We
aide
gotta
to
let them
move
go through it.
boxes of classified documents to hide them from the FBI. Trump tried to delete incriminating security tape footage from Mar-a-Lago, and he got his attorney to provide a false certification to the
All
FBI
lies.
saying he had produced all the documents in his possession. He did not. Given that this report is so damning in the contrast between Biden and Trump, it is hard for me to see why our colleagues think that this hearing advances their flailing and embarrassing quest
Let
to
her
impeach
speak.
the President of the United States. What America sees today is evidence of one president who believes in the rule of law and works to protect it, and one who has nothing but contempt for the rule of law and acts solely in pursuit of his own constantly multiplying corrupt schemes. I yield back.
These people are
Gentleman yields
deranged.
back without objection. All other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. The Honorable Robert Herr was appointed as a special
All right,
counsel
now.
in January 2023 to investigate the removal and retention of classified documents discovered at the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement. He previously served as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General at the Department of Justice and as the United States Attorney for the District of Maryland. He was a law clerk for Chief Justice William Rehnquist and also clerked for Judge Alex Kaczynski on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We welcome our witness and thank him for appearing today. We'll begin by swearing you in. Mr. Herr, would you please stand? Raise your right hand.
All
Do
right.
you swear or affirm under penalty
Take
of
it down.
perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and you can be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Mr. Herr, you may begin with your opening statement. Make sure you get that mic on if you could, Mr. Herr. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you,
please
Chairman.
get the mic on.
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, members of the committee, good morning. I'm privileged to have served our country for the majority of my career, a decade and a half, most of those years with the Department of Justice. I have served as a line prosecutor, a supervisor, the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, a United States Attorney, and a special counsel. I've served in these roles with gratitude as the son of immigrants to this country, the first member of my family to be born here. My parents grew up in Korea and were young children during the Korean War. My father remembers being hungry and grateful for the food that American GIs shared with him and his siblings. My mother fled what is now North Korea in her own mother's arms, heading south to safety. My parents eventually met, married, and came to the US, seeking a better life for themselves and for their children. Their lives and mine would have been very different were it not for this country. No matter the role, no matter the administration, I have applied the same standards and the same impartiality. My respect for the Justice Department and my commitment to this country are why I agreed to serve as special counsel when asked by the Attorney General. I resolved to do the work as I did all my work for the department, fairly, thoroughly, and professionally, with close attention to the policies and practices that govern department prosecutors. My team and I conducted a thorough, independent investigation. We identified evidence that the president willfully retained classified materials after the end of his vice presidency when he was a private citizen.
Boom!
This evidence included an audio recorded conversation during which Mr. Biden told his ghostwriter that he had, quote, just found all the classified stuff downstairs, end quote.
Boom!
When Mr. Biden said this, he was a private citizen speaking to his ghostwriter in his private rental home in Virginia. We also identified other recorded conversations during which Mr. Biden read classified information aloud.
Yeah,
to
we're
his
not talking
ghostwriter.
about Trump right now. No.
We did not, however, identify evidence that rose to the level of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Because the evidence fell short of that standard, I declined to recommend criminal charges against Mr. Biden. The department's regulations required me to write a confidential report explaining my decision to the Attorney General. I understood that my explanation about this case had to include rigorous, detailed, and thorough analysis. In other words, I needed to show my work, just as I would expect any prosecutor to show his or her work explaining the decision to prosecute or not. The need to show my work was especially strong here. The Attorney General had appointed me to investigate the actions of the Attorney General's boss, the sitting President of the United States. I knew that for my decision to be credible, I could not simply announce that I recommended no criminal charges and leave it at that. I needed to explain why. My report reflects my best effort to explain why I declined to recommend charging President Biden. I analyzed the evidence as prosecutors routinely do, by assessing its strengths and weaknesses, including by anticipating the ways in which the president's defense lawyers might poke holes in the government's case, if there were a trial, and seek to persuade jurors that the government could not prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. There has been a lot of attention paid to language in the report about the president's memory, so let me say a few words about that. My task was to determine whether the president retained or disclosed national defense information willfully. That means knowingly and with the intent to do something the law forbids. I could not make that determination without assessing the president's state of mind. For that reason, I had to consider the president's memory and overall mental state and how a jury likely would perceive his memory and mental state in a criminal trial. These are the types of issues that prosecutors analyze every day. And because these issues were important to my ultimate decision, I had to include a discussion of them in my report to the Attorney General. The evidence and the president himself put his memory squarely at issue. We interviewed the president and asked him about his recorded statement, quote, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs, end quote. He told us that he didn't remember saying that to his ghostwriter. He also said he didn't remember finding any classified material in his home after his vice presidency. And he didn't remember anything about how classified documents about Afghanistan made their way into his garage.
PAPPA can't remember.
My assessment in the report about the relevance of the president's memory was necessary and accurate and fair. Most importantly, what I wrote is what I believe the evidence shows and what I expect jurors would perceive and believe. I did not sanitize my explanation, nor did I disparage the president unfairly. I explained to the Attorney General my decision and the reasons for it. That's what I was required to do. I took the same approach when I compared the evidence regarding President Biden to the department's allegations against former President Trump. There too, I called it like I saw it. As a prosecutor, I had to consider relevant precedents and to explain why different facts justify different outcomes.
That's
That
right.
is what I did in my report. I'm confident the analysis set forth in chapters 11, 12, and 13 of my report provides a thorough evaluation and explanation of the evidence, and I encourage everyone to read it to inform their opinions of the report. Prosecutors rarely write public reports or testify about their investigations. That is the Justice Department's longstanding policy, and it protects important interests. My team and I prepared the report to the Attorney General with care, and the report stands as the primary source of information. My responses today will be limited to clarifying information for the committee. I will refrain from speculating or commenting on areas outside the scope of the investigation, nor will I discuss what investigative steps we did or did not take beyond what's in the report. In conclusion, I want to express my heartfelt thanks to the attorneys, agents, analysts, and professional staff who helped us do our work fairly, thoroughly, and independently. I am grateful and privileged to have served with them. I single out for particular thanks Deputy Special Counsel Mark Crickbaum, a former United States Attorney himself, who brought great wisdom, skill, and judgment to our task. Thank you. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Dakota for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How could that possibly happen? How could anyone be that irresponsible? And I thought, what data was in there that could compromise sources, methods, and it's just totally irresponsible? That is President Biden's statement about Donald Trump and the classified documents. Mr. Hurd, classified documents were found at the Penn Biden Center?
That's correct.
They were found in President Biden's garage?
In Wilmington, Delaware, yes.
And in his basement den?
Also in the same home, yes.
And his main floor office?
Correct.
And his third floor den?
Correct.
Four
At the
places.
University of Delaware?
Correct.
And at
Five
the
places.
Biden Institute?
6 places.
Correct.
And the elements of the crime for this, I mean, we get into all of this, but the elements of the crime are pretty simple, right? President Biden had unauthorized possession of a document, writing, or note. That's correct.
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 And that the document, writing, or note related to national defense.
Correct.
Correct.
And that the defendant, and we may talk about the willfully part here in a second, retained the document, writing, or note and failed to deliver it to an employee or officer entitled to receive it.
Correct.
Correct. There is a willfulness intent element, as you say,
But those are the elements of the crime.
including the intent element, yes.
And there are at least
Good.
2 different quotes, right? Where he told his ghostwriter, and this is in your report, in a matter of fact, and this is February 16, 2017, that he had just found all this classified stuff downstairs.
He did make that statement that was captured on an audio recording.
And on April 10th, 2017, Biden read aloud a classified passage related to a 2015 meeting in the Situation Room.
That is in the report, yes.
And these are national security documents. Afghanistan, I mean, has been mentioned, a whole bunch of those things, right?
Correct.
And at one point in time, his personal attorneys and the DOJ attorneys argued about notes, taking all of the different things and compared it to Reagan.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Congressman?
President Biden's attorneys, personal attorneys, talked about the notes and why they didn't actually account for the Presidential Records Act. But you found that argument in your report. It seems a little persuasive, but you eventually said, no, the executive order trumps, right?
We did set forth an analysis of the governing law and ultimately concluded that the executive order 13526 does apply and did govern former Vice President Biden at the time.
So you have audio recording from his ghostwriter where the president acknowledges that the information he has is classified and he's sharing with his ghostwriter.
We have an audio recording capturing a statement from Mr. Biden saying to his ghostwriter in February of 2017, quote, "I just found all the classified stuff downstairs," end quote.
And then again, reciting passages from a meeting in the Situation Room.
Yes.
And those are in President Biden's own words.
Correct.
Right. So and the ghostwriter has no classified, he has no clearance, no classified clearance to anything. Correct?
That is our understanding, that Mr. Zwanitzer was not authorized to receive classified information.
But he got it.
The elements are possessed documents, the documents related to national defense, and willfully retain those documents. And in this case,
my friend used to pay $163 for car insurance. Now look how much he pays. Most insurance companies are
793, one subsection relates to the willful retention and another relates to disclosure of national defense information.
Well, I mean, the willful retention, we've got the Penn Biden Center, the garage, the basement den, the main floor office, the third floor den, the University of Delaware, and the Biden Institute. We have
Six
a 50-year
places.
career of a person who has not been very great at dealing with classified documents throughout, even prior to his time as vice president, when he was in the
You're
US
shadow
Senate,
banning
right?
me. Y'all make your.
We do address
y'all
each
share
set
this.
of those documents in the report, Congressman.
So the difference, but I think this is really important because the difference is it appears just from reading the report, he has been, we heard all about exonerated and all of those different things. It appears from the report, he met every actual element of the crime. So I want to talk about the department principles on federal prosecution.
Yeah.
That actually has nothing to do with the underlying elements.
Yeah,
correct?
he
It's
met
whether
the
or not
bar.
you
He
can
met
prove
the
this
standard of
crime.
treason, high crimes, and misdemeanors.
Under
Oh,
the
without a doubt.
department's Justice Manual and the principles of federal prosecution, a prosecutor has to assess the evidence and determine whether, in his or her judgment, the probable outcome will be a conviction at trial.
So whether or not you meet the elements of the crime, which I think it's clear that he does, the second part of this is this, and that's where it gets into the sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. You could have just said, we don't prosecute sitting presidents, but you did not. And you enter this, but that doesn't have anything to do with the actual elements of the crime. That has to do with getting a conviction at trial, correct?
Well, Congressman, part and parcel of a prosecutor's judgment as to whether or not a conviction is the probable outcome of trial is assessing how the evidence identified during the investigation lines up with the elements and what proof can be offered to a jury during a trial.
What proof? He's guilty. He already met all of the criterias.
The jury.
It certainly has something.
Gentleman can respond.
It certainly has something to do with the way that a jury is going to perceive and receive and consider and make conclusions based on evidence at trial, Congressman.
Time the gentleman has expired. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Nadler.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hur, in your written testimony, you say that you found some evidence that the president might have willfully retained classified materials at the end of his vice presidency, correct?
Correct.
But ultimately, you concluded that you could not prove that charge in the court of law. In your words, you, quote, did not identify evidence that rose to the level of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, close quote, correct?
That was my judgment.
You have been a prosecutor for a long time, Mr. Hur. Would you agree that there's no such thing as being a little bit charged for a crime? You're either charged or you're not, correct?
Could you please repeat the question, Congressman?
Would you agree that there's no such thing as being a little bit charged for a crime? You're either charged or you are not charged, correct?
Yes, it is binary. Either one is not
Thank you.
charged or charged.
So just to be clear, because so many people have taken your words out of context, your ultimate conclusion was that President Biden could not be charged with a crime because even after your thorough investigation, you could not find sufficient evidence to charge him, correct?
My conclusion was that based on my evaluation of the evidence as a prosecutor.
Don't feel about it, correct?
I'm sorry, Congressman, I didn't hear your last question.
I said, based on your conclusion,
badgering
your
him.
ultimate
Let him
conclusion is
answer
that
the
President
question.
Biden could not be charged with a crime because even after your thorough investigation, you could not find sufficient evidence to charge
Now let
him.
him answer the
Correct or
question.
not correct?
My ultimate conclusion was that
Let him
criminal
answer the
charges were
question.
not warranted.
Correct. Now let's talk about why. I have limited time, so please, when I say correct or not correct, answer the question. Now let's talk about
Listen to
why,
this
in sharp
asshole.
contrast to President Biden, President Trump
people
faces
see
40
this.
charges related to the unlawful retention of highly classified documents. That is, of course, apart from the additional 51 counts in cases alleging that he incited a rebellion and lied about his finances. You found that President Biden reported the
about
possible
Trump.
classified documents in his possession to the FBI as soon as he learned of them, correct?
There was a voluntary disclosure by the president's counsel to authorities relating to the discovery of classified documents at the Penn Biden.
Let's contrast this with President Trump. Are you aware
Leave
that the
Trump out of
FBI
this.
only learned that Trump was in possession of classified material after the National Archives discovered them?
Congressman, I am not intimately familiar with the facts
Thank
relating to
you.
former President Trump. I'm prepared to comment on them to the extent that I address them in
Okay.
the report.
You write in your report that President Biden, quote, would not have handed the government classified documents
Hey, I'm
from his
glad
own
they're
home on
doing
a
this.
silver platter if he had willfully retained those documents for years, close quote. In other words, part of understanding President Biden's intent was that he quickly and voluntarily returned those documents to the government, correct?
After he got
Was
busted.
a factor in our analysis, yes.
Thank you. By way of contrast, to the best of your knowledge, why did the Department of Justice seek a warrant to search Mar-a-Lago?
Congressman, I am not familiar with
Leave
those
Trump out of
deliberations.
this.
That is a matter that I had no participation
Well,
in.
I'll tell you, it was because they were concerned that Trump had lied about possession of those documents and might conceal or destroy them.
Of
Special
course.
Counsel
Trump,
Smith found that
Trump,
President Trump
Trump.
obstructed his investigation by suggesting that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that Trump did not have the documents called for by the grand jury subpoena. At any point in your investigation, did you have any reason to believe that President Biden lied to you?
I do address in my report one response the president gave to a question that we had posed to him that we deemed to be not credible.
Was it clear he didn't lie?
I'm sorry, Congressman.
The report is clear that he didn't lie, or that he caused his staff to lie to you, and that he didn't cause his staff to lie to you. Your report is clear on that. You agree that causing someone to lie to the FBI is a classic example of obstruction of justice?
Clear.
It is an example of obstruction, yes.
Thank you. Trump also obstructed the Smith investigation by directing one of his employees
Am I
move
sorry I
boxes of
covered
documents
this
to
morning?
conceal them
I
from
thought
Trump's
we were talking
attorney,
about Joe
from
Biden.
the FBI and from the grand jury. At any point in your investigation, did you find that President Biden directed his staff to conceal documents from you or anyone else?
We did not reach that
Okay.
conclusion.
You would agree that hiding documents is a classic example of obstructing?
It is an example of obstruction.
Thank you. Donald Trump instructed his staff to delete security footage so that the FBI and special counsel could not see how he had tried
You're
to
making
move and
this
hide
about
documents.
Trump.
Do you agree that attempting to delete video footage in this manner is plainly an attempt to obstruct an investigation?
Congressman, I don't want to characterize the evidence in the case against former
But
President.
if that happened, would you agree that deleting video footage is plainly an attempt to obstruct an investigation?
Congressman, it's the type of evidence that prosecutors would consider.
To sum up, Donald Trump is charged with willfully retaining classified documents and conspiring to conceal those documents.
This is a shame.
And he's facing additional charges for lying to investigators.
This is a shame.
Isn't that correct?
Those are allegations that are in a pending
Matter of
indictment
public
against
record.
former President Trump.
And the reason why President Biden is not facing a single charge, Mr. Herr, is
Just
not
say
because you went
he's too
easy on him,
old.
but because
Please,
after
Herr.
reviewing 7 million documents and interviewing nearly 150 witnesses, including the president himself, you could not prove that he had committed a crime. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from, Mr. McClintock, gentleman from California.
No, you didn't do a good job,
Thank you,
Nadler.
Mr. Herr. I first want to get this straight.
Arrogant.
Is it now okay if I take home top secret documents, store them in my garage, and read portions of them to friends or associates?
Congressman, I wouldn't recommend it, but I don't want to entertain any hypotheticals at this point.
Was it okay? I mean, I can do that now under this new doctrine?
Again, Congressman, I wouldn't recommend that you do that, but
Well,
I don't wanna-
you've essentially said so in your report. And certainly it would be exculpatory if I simply told you, hey, I'm getting old. I don't remember stuff the way I used to.
Congressman, I'm not here to get into hypotheticals.
Yeah.
I'm here to talk about the facts and the work that I did.
It was not a hypothetical. This is the issue at hand. You correctly noted in your report that former presidents and other senior officials have been given wide latitude in their possession of classified information. And I believe your decision not to prosecute Biden for the same offense is consistent with that precedent. But the problem is that precedent changed with the administration's decision to prosecute Donald Trump. And the irony is that as president, Trump had full discretion over handling classified material and full discretion in deciding which records to retain. As a senator or vice president, Joe Biden didn't have that. So now we get to this glaring double standard. I think it would be toxic to the rule of law on its face if it was just two ordinary citizens.
Boom.
But the fact that the only person being prosecuted for this offense happens to be the president's political opponent makes this an unprecedented assault on our democracy.
That's right.
This is the worst we could expect from a banana republic. And I wonder how you square this.
That's right.
Congressman, I do address, as I was required to as a prosecutor, a relevant
say the
precedent in the
motherfucker too
form of
old.
the allegations in the indictment against former President Trump. I set forth my explanation and my assessment and comparison of those precedents in my report, and I am not here to comment any further beyond
Well,
what's in my report.
you said, for example, that there was no evidence beyond reasonable doubt. Well, You got the fact that he had classified material in his possession and control in
How
multiple
much reasonable
settings for
doubt you
multiple
need?
years, that he told others he was aware of this, and that he shared that material with others. The mind boggles at what beyond reasonable doubt would actually mean.
Thank you. Thank
Well,
you.
as I set forth at length in my explanations in chapters 11 and 12 of the report, my assessment is that the evidence, if presented at trial alongside potential defense arguments, would not probably result in a conviction at
Well,
trial.
that's one of the points you make, is that President Biden's likely to be an elderly, sympathetic figure with a poor memory. But how does that bear on any individual's guilt or innocence? Isn't that, again, a question for a judge or jury to decide after guilt or innocence is determined?
That's right.
And again, here's the problem. Donald Trump's being prosecuted for exactly the same act that you've documented that Joe Biden committed.
That's right.
Congressman, if I understood your question correctly, you said, isn't that a question for a jury? And it most certainly, through the lens of
My question is, does that bear on the guilt or innocence of an individual?
it certainly bears on how a jury is going to receive and perceive and make decisions.
So the answer to my earlier question is correct. All I have to do when I'm caught taking home classified materials to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Herbert, but I'm getting old. My memory's not so great.
Congressman,
This is the doctrine that you've established in our laws now, and it's frightening.
That's
Congressman,
right.
my intent is certainly not to establish any
Well,
sort of
you
doctrine.
did.
I had a particular task. I have a particular set of evidence to consider and make a judgment with respect to one particular set of evidence, and that is what I did.
Well, Mr. Herr, here's the fine point of the matter. The foundation of our justice system is equal justice
Under the law.
That's what gives the law its respect and its legitimacy. And without it, the law is simply force, devoid of any moral authority.
Thank y'all for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, ring that bell so you can get these instant notifications. Her is in a pickle. He don't know what the hell to do. He don't know what the hell to say.
And the rule of law becomes a sick mockery. It becomes a weapon to wield against political rivals and a tool of despotism. And I am desperately afraid that this decision of the Department of Justice is now crossed a very bright line. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Chairman, I ask for unanimous consent to introduce the State of the Union as into the hearing.
Without objection, that'll be introduced. The ranking member is recognized for unanimous consent.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that a copy
Natalie,
of
you need to sit
an article in
your
this
fat ass
morning's
down.
Washington Post entitled "Full Transcript of Biden's Special Counsel Interview Paints Nuanced Portrait." The president doesn't come across as absent-minded as her has made him out to be.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes, now recognizes the gentlelady from California for 5 minutes.
They think this
Thank
is
you,
a
Mr.
joke.
Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Herr, for being here today. I found your report very interesting, and I learned some things about it. The law and the precedents. There are clear differences between the cases and precedents set by Presidents Reagan, Trump, and Biden. Now, it was widely known that President Reagan kept diaries from his presidency that included classified information. What I
President
didn't
Reagan.
know and learned in your report was that the Department of Justice, quote, repeatedly described the diaries in public court filings
Joe
as Mr.
Biden was
Reagan's
not
personal
authorized to have any
unquote,
of
and
this.
that no agency ever attempted to remove his diaries. That's on page 195 of your report. Very interesting. So the investigation found that President Biden believed that his notebooks were his personal property, including work and political notes, reflections, to-do lists, and more that he was entitled to take home. You found that on page 232. So while much of his notebook was work-related, he still had some purely personal subjects like, again, I quote, gut-wrenching entities about the illness and death of his son, Beau. And that's on page 82 and 253 of your report. So it's clear, based on the Reagan precedent, that no criminal charges were awarded in this matter relative to personal notebooks. Now, I want to be clear that although the notebooks contain some very personal information and President Biden considered them his personal property,
or
The
whatever
president
with this
allowed your
personal
team to
shit.
seize and review all of the notebooks you found. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, that's in stark contrast to ex-President Trump's case.
Here we go
He
with Trump
obstructed
again.
and diverted all the investigations. Now, you also interviewed President Biden about other classified documents you found outside his notebooks, didn't you?
Yes, Congresswoman.
So did the president tell you that he believed any documents other than his own handwritten work were his personal property? Yes or no?
We did not hear that from the president during his interview.
He
So
knew
again, it's very
classified
different
information
from
wasn't his personal.
ex-President Trump.
These people lie.
Ex-President Trump
Oh God, here we
said
go with
all of
Trump.
the documents marked classified were his personal property. President Biden did not consider documents that were produced by other entities with classification markings as his personal records. Now, I think, since the majority is
She don't
trying
know
to
what the shit. She don't know what the
assert
hell
that
she's talking about.
there is a disparity based on politics and the differences in the prosecution, it's worth quoting page 11 of the report, which says, and I quote, "Several material distinctions between Mr. Trump's case and Mr. Biden's case are clear. Most notably, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence."
Lies, 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 lies. These heathens are liars.
Turned in classified documents to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, consented to the search of multiple locations, including his homes, sat for a voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation. It's clear that these cases are not the same. And frankly, I was surprised to learn that some of the classified documents were actually personal diaries that many executives.
Y'all make sure y'all like, share, subscribe. Go get yourself another cup of coffee. Try to stay awake for this bullshit. Oh my goodness.
Public statements during the Reagan administration, it is understandable that a person could believe that their personal diaries that they produced were not to be turned over, just as President Reagan did not turn them over. So I appreciate your report. I appreciate your being here, Mr. Herr. And I would also like to ask, Mr. Chairman, a unanimous request to include in the record a September 11th letter from the Special Counsel to the President to Special Counsel Herr, and also a letter to Merrick Garland.
Objection.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I see my time has expired and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair is recognized. Mr.
What a
Herr, why
waste
did
of
he do it?
time.
Why did Joe Biden, in your words, willfully retain and disclose classified materials? I mean, he knew the law. Been in office like 50 years, 5 decades in the United States Senate, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, 8 years as vice president. He got briefed every day as vice president. He's been in the Situation Room. In fact, you know he knew the rules because you said so on page 226. President Biden was deeply familiar with the measures taken to safeguard classified documents. And Joe Biden told us he knew the rules. Mr. Armstrong said this earlier. Joe Biden was deeply familiar with it. You're exactly right, because he told us when Jack Smith goes after President.
Facts always, always override bullshit and lies.
It's irresponsible. So Joe Biden knew the rules. You know he knew the rules. And Joe Biden told us he knew the rules. So, Mr. Herr, why did he break them?
Congressman, the conclusion as to exactly
Answer the
why
question.
The president did what he did is not one that we explicitly address in the report. The report explains my decision to the Attorney General that no criminal charges were warranted in this manner.
I think you did tell us. I think you told us, Mr. Herr. Page 231, you said this. President Biden had strong motivations. That's a key word. We're getting to motive now. President Biden had strong motivations to ignore the proper procedures for safeguarding the classified information in his notebooks.
Break it down.
Why did he have strong motivations? because, next word, because he decided months before leaving office to write a book. To write a book. That was his motive. He knew the rules. He broke them because he was writing a book. And you further say, and he began meeting with the ghostwriter while he was still vice president. There's the motive.
Get him.
Mr. Herr, how much did President Biden get paid for his book?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if that information appears in the report.
Sure
but
does. There's a dollar amount in there. You
That's
remember?
right. Don't walk him back
don't
now.
think- It may be 8 million if
$8
that's
million.
Wow. Wow.
Joe Biden had 8 million reasons to break the rules.
Wow.
Took classified information and shared it with the guy who was writing the book.
Boom.
That's why he did. He knew the rules, but he broke them for $8 million in a book advance. But you know what? It wasn't just the money. Joe Biden, here's this page 231, very next page. Joe Biden, in your report, Joe Biden viewed his notebooks as an irreplaceable, contemporaneous record of the most important moments of his vice presidency. He'd written this all down for the book, for the $8 million. And the next thing you say in your report is, quote, such a record would buttress his legacy as a world leader. You know what this is? It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just $8 million. It was also his ego. Pride and money is why he knowingly violated the rules.
Get him, Jim.
The oldest motives in the book, pride and money. You agree with that, Mr. Herr? You wrote it in your report.
that language, and it does appear in the report, and we did identify evidence supporting those assessments.
You also had another interesting statement in your report. You said Joe Biden, I want to make sure I get this right, viewed himself as a man of presidential timber. Remember that statement, Mr. Herr?
I believe that does appear in the report, at least in the executive summary.
Get him, Jim.
I think this is interesting because here's the scary part. Page 200. I said this earlier in my opening statement. Page 200, Joe Biden, this is a quote, Joe Biden risked serious damage to America's national security when he shared information with his ghostwriter.
Boom, another
Shared it with his
breaking law.
ghostwriter, the guy who was helping Joe Biden get $8 million. And oh, by the way, Mr. Herr, what did that ghostwriter do with the information Joe Biden shared with him on his laptop? What did he do after you were named special counsel?
Chairman, if you're referring to the audio recordings that Mr. Zwanitzer created of his conversations with
Exactly
Mr.
what
Biden,
I'm referring to.
he slid, if I remember correctly, he slid those files into his recycle bin on his computer.
Tried to destroy the evidence, didn't he?
Correct.
Wow.
The very guy who was helping Joe Biden get the $8 million, Joe Biden had used what the motive for Joe Biden to disclose classified information, to retain classified information, which he definitely knew was against the law. When you get named special counsel,
Trying to
what's
get
that
rid
guy
of that
do?
shit.
He destroys the evidence.
He tried to get rid of it.
That's the key takeaway in my mind. That's the key takeaway.
Why
I
you
yield
trying
back.
to do that for? Bro tried to wipe his hands clean of that shit.
Gentleman from Maryland for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Herr, your report starts with the line, "We conclude that no criminal charges
Oh,
are
shit.
warranted in this
Here we go
matter."
with this again.
Have you had any reason to change your opinion about that?
No, ranking member.
You highlight the independence and support you got from the Attorney General and DOJ. Have you changed your mind about that?
This is hilarious.
I have not.
The report describes President Biden's cooperation in your request.
Good for
He allowed
Trump,
his
though.
homes
You
to
know
be
he's gonna bring
searched.
Trump up.
He answered questions for hours in the midst of a global crisis. Have you had any reason to change your mind about that?
No, ranking member.
All right. You also repeatedly contrast Biden's cooperation with the conduct of Donald Trump. You say,
There you
quote,
go.
most notably after being
There
given
you
multiple
go. I
chances to
called it.
return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice
You can laugh, girl.
by
You ain't
listing
gotta sit
others
there with
to
a straight
destroy
face.
evidence
You
and
can
then
laugh.
lie about it.
You see old girl
Have you
back
had
there
any reason
wanting
to
to
change your
laugh. They
judgment
wanna
about the
laugh so
differences
much.
between President Biden's
They can't 'cause they know the
cooperation
camera on.
and the former president's non-cooperation?
And they're on
No, I
that
continue
team.
to stand by those words in my report.
With such a striking contrast, our colleagues have switched over from being impeachment investigators for constitutional high crimes and misdemeanors,
goodness.
which is how this whole thing started, to being amateur memory specialists, giving us their drive-by
Okay.
diagnoses of the President of the United States,
All
whose
right.
soaring oratory, powerful historical
Fantastic.
analysis
It's funny.
and devastating
Smile
extemporaneous
back there.
repartee with even
Smile.
the
Go
most
ahead,
skilled
laugh.
ninja hecklers of the Freedom Caucus were on full display at the State of the Union address last week for the
'Cause
whole
he
country to
is
see.
hysterical.
The desperate quest to invent an issue is a distraction from the 91 federal and state federal charges that Donald Trump faces now.
I bet
His
you'll go back and
staggering
laugh before
civil
this is all
court
over.
losses in New York
Look,
now
she would've
totaling
laughed
more
so
than
bad.
$500 million, and his
Yo, check out the girl in the back. She wants to laugh so bad. I might watch the whole show just to watch her break. She's about to break. She can't hold it.
in Russia, the former head of the KGB, to the communist dictator of North Korea. It's not, this, my friends, this is a memory test. But it's not a memory test for President Biden. It's a memory test for all of America.
Laugh.
Do we remember fascism? Do we remember Nazism? Do we remember communism and totalitarianism? Have we completely forgotten the sacrifices of our parents and grandparents in prior generations? While we play pin the tail on the donkey in this wild goose chase, all of these silly games, Donald Trump entertains authoritarian hustler Viktor Orban at Mar-a-Lago for the weekend, and Orban comes out to declare that if we indeed sleepwalk into another Trump presidency, Trump will, quote, not give a single penny to Ukraine. That's what all of this is about. It's about trying to pull the wool over the eyes of America.
Oh, shit.
Because the tyrants and dictators of the world are on the march today.
Y'all
So
are.
who wins with this ludicrous, embarrassing spectacle? Orban wins, Putin wins, Xi wins, the tyrants of the world win. They have one more reason to celebrate Donald Trump and his cult followers who've completely lost their way. They're looking for high.
So Jamie Raskin has just called America, half of America, we're cult followers that have lost our way. Oh my goodness.
On the side of people struggling against fascist aggression? Will we stand with the people of Ukraine against Vladimir Putin, whose filthy war has meant the kidnapping of thousands of Ukrainian children, the murder, the slaughter of thousands of Ukrainian civilians, and the attack on an independent sovereign democracy? But we're not working on that today. We're not standing up for democracy and human rights and
No, we're
international
letting
law
her tell
around
the
the world.
truth.
No, we're trying to play memory detectives to parse the language of a president who the whole world got to see at the State of the Union address directly address the real questions of our time. And it is democracy versus dictatorship. And all of the autocrats and the theocrats, all of the kleptocrats of the world are together in league against American democracy. And we have to stand up for American democracy against these stupid games. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I can't believe
Gentleman
he
yields
had the
back.
balls
The
to make
chairman of
that
the
speech.
Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer, is recognized for 5
But he
minutes.
Thank you,
did.
Mr. Chairman. During the Oversight Committee interviews, we've identified a number of White House employees who were involved in the mishandling of classified documents under the leadership of President Biden. Special Counsel Hurd, can you please tell us approximately how many current and former White House employees you interviewed related to your investigation?
Chairman Comer, I don't have that figure immediately at hand. Of course, it was a subset of the 173 interviews that we conducted during our investigation.
Your report indicates that one of those former White House employees who you interviewed was Dana Remus. Is that correct?
We did interview Ms. Remus.
Ms. Remus was President Biden's former White House counsel, correct?
She was President Obama's former White House counsel.
I'm sorry, President Obama's White House counsel. Yes. Related to Ms. Remus, in your report on page 257, you wrote, in May 2022, White House counsel Dana Remus undertook an effort to retrieve Mr. Biden's files from the Penn Biden Center. Remus described the original purpose of that effort as gathering materials to prepare for potential congressional inquiries about the Biden family's activities during the period from 2017 to 2019. Now, it seems odd to me that Dana Remus and Joe Biden's personal lawyers were obtaining documents related to potential congressional inquiries about the Biden family activities when Joe Biden has publicly claimed he had no involvement with his family's business dealings. Can you provide more information about why Dana Remus, a government employee, was retrieving Joe Biden's documents from the Penn Biden Center?
Chairman, I am able to tell you and clarify information that appears in the report about relevant, significant sources of information, but I am not in a position to be able to go beyond that.
When you interviewed President Biden, did you ask him what documents he possessed at Penn Biden Center that could be related to a potential congressional inquiry about his family's activities?
We asked President Biden a wealth of questions about all of the different sets of classified materials that were recovered during the course of our investigation.
Did anything pertain specifically to our congressional inquiry of President Biden that you recall?
If there are more specific aspects of it that you have in mind, Chairman, that would be helpful to me.
Interest pertaining to his family's influence peddling activities?
If it's helpful, Chairman, Appendix A does list in table chart form a brief description of all of the marked classified documents that were recovered in our investigation.
We intend to interview Ms. Remus, and the recording or transcript of your interview would be highly relevant to our future questioning of her. Can you confirm that you did in fact record her in your interview?
It was our practice to record the interviews that we conducted, Chairman Comer.
Additionally, in the course of the investigation, the Oversight Committee learned from a Penn Biden Center employee that Annie Tomasini, a White House employee, visited the Penn Biden Center in 2021. Did you interview Annie Tomasini in the course of your investigation?
Chairman, we do not, the report does not reflect that specific name.
Okay.
What I can tell you is that the report does reflect that we interviewed the Director of Oval Office Operations, and one of the places that's reflected is footnote 973.
Okay. The Oversight Committee interviewed Kathy Chung, a Department of Defense employee and former assistant to Vice President Biden, and learned that Ms. Chung visited the Biden Penn Center in June 2022 after being contacted by White House counsel in May 2022. This was months before classified documents were allegedly found in November 2022. Did you interview Kathy Chung in the course of your investigation?
Chairman, I believe that the substance relating to the subject that you're asking about appears on page 259 of the report. And while the name Kathy Chung does not appear in the text of the report, there are references to interviews of an executive assistant, including at footnote 988.
The Oversight Committee also learned from its interviews with Penn Biden Center employees and Kathy Chung that Dana Remus, Anthony Bernal, and Ashley Williams, all at the time White House employees, then visited the Penn Biden Center on different occasions before the alleged discovery of classified materials in November 2022. Did you interview these individuals during your investigation?
We interviewed many individuals, and I can assure you, Chairman, that it was a priority of ours to interview all the relevant sources of information about these documents, how they got there, who knew about them, and who accessed them.
Can you, so again, they were all recorded, is that correct? So there would be recordings?
It was our practice to interview recordings, yes, sir.
How many White House employees visited the Penn Biden Center before classified materials were reportedly discovered there in November 2022?
I don't have
according to the White House.
Sir, I don't have an exact count of.
How many visits to the Penn Biden Center were made by either White House employees or President Biden's personal attorneys before the official discovery of documents in November 2022?
I don't have that figure at hand, but that should be detailed in chapter 14 of the report, sir.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
All right, they're playing ping pong. So you go from one
anytime you need a break, just
to
if you need a break,
somebody
let us
with
know, because we're
substance.
going to go a while, as you well know.
Thank you, sir.
So y'all tune in.
Jackson Lee's recognized.
Y'all can go to YouTube. I won't bore y'all anymore. I appreciate everybody for tuning in for Morning Coffee. As Miss Jackson Lee speaks, and then we'll take it out, and y'all can go ahead to YouTube and pick it up.
Sir, good morning.
Say.
Good morning.
The Republicans here asked for a lot of transcripts, but Chair Jordan has yet to release 90+ transcripts from our interviews with those, if they are to be released to the American people.
Here comes Trump.
My question to you is, you decided, based on the facts, not to prosecute or indict or bring forward charges against the President of the United States, the sitting President, Joseph Biden. Is that correct?
That was my judgment.
This investigation was independent and thorough. Is that correct?
Yes.
We have heard from our Republican colleagues who are grasping at straws, allegations that President Biden was treated lightly in this investigation.
Because PAPPA too
Just
old.
a plain reading of this report completely refutes that argument. There was no two-tiered system of justice. There was only a lack of evidence against President Biden.
Good
Mr.
morning, Mr.
Your office
Egan.
and the FBI undertook an extensive investigation into Mr. Biden's handling of classified information and of the classified documents the FBI seized, correct?
Correct.
In your investigation, you conducted 173 interviews of 147 witnesses, correct?
That is correct.
And President Biden himself was one of those witnesses, correct?
Correct.
For at least 5 hours or more.
Correct.
And President Biden engaged in this interview voluntarily.
Correct.
And the interview with President Biden lasted more than 5 hours. I've said that. That's correct.
Correct.
And the interview, and it occurred the day, which all should know, after the horrific attack, October 7th, 2023, Hamas attack in Israel, according to a letter from the White House counsel. Is that correct?
The interview spans 2 days, October 8th and October 9th.
With the president having to be in and out to deal with an international crisis, and after the interview, he provided handwritten answers to additional questions, correct?
Congresswoman, I don't recall the president being in and out during our interview to handle the internet.
Let me go on. And President Biden allowed investigators to search his private houses. Is that correct?
He did consent to the search of his residence.
And your investigation collected 7 million documents for review in your investigation. Is that correct?
Correct.
And this included emails, text messages, photographs, videos, toll records, and other materials from both classified and unclassified sources.
Correct.
Correct? And you referred or reviewed President Biden's handwritten notes as well, correct?
Correct.
And you coordinated with the multiple government agencies to organize and complete your investigation, correct?
We consulted with numerous agencies to conduct
And that
classification
included
reviews of evidence that was seized during the investigation.
Right. And that included working with national security experts in the intelligence community to carefully analyze each classified document that was obtained.
With respect to marked classified documents, that's correct. We submitted excerpts from the former vice president's notebooks for classification review.
And if agencies reviewed classified material and gave it different levels of classification, you classified it as a higher level for the purposes of your investigation to be thorough, correct?
That is reflected in appendices A
Thank
and
you.
B.
The FBI requested classification review from each identified.
They won't even
agency
let him answer
accordingly
the full
for
question.
documents where multiple agencies had equities. The special counsel's office used the highest level of classification identified by an agency as the current classification of the document. Let me go on. Attorney General Garland appointed you as special counsel over the matter on January 12, 2023, correct?
Correct.
He authorized you to investigate Mr. Biden's possession of the classified documents, including possible unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents or other records.
Correct.
As, at the Penn Biden Center, President Biden's home, Delaware, as well as any matters that arose from the initial investigation or may arise directly from the special counsel investigation. Is that correct?
I believe that accurately reflects the language of the appointment order.
So you operated an independent investigation for about a year, which you just stated that you had adequate resources to complete, in which you conducted 173 interviews, included with President Biden himself. You reviewed 7 million documents, including President Biden's personal records, and searched his home thoroughly. And in this thorough, lengthy investigation, you did not uncover enough evidence to recommend prosecution against the president. Is that correct?
That's my judgment.
And if you had found enough evidence to warrant prosecution.
How much more evident? That's like saying somebody robbed a bank, but you can't prosecute them because when you went in their house, you couldn't find all the money that the bank said that was stolen. Instead of finding $1 million, you find 250,000. So you can't arrest them because it just don't make no sense.
And the words in the report are my own.
And you would have done so.
Regular order, Mr.
The
Chairman.
time of the gentlelady has
Would have done so.
expired.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put into the record
No.
security.org, the real
Without-
Robert Hura report,
without
as
objection.
unanimous consent.
Without objection. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida. 5 minutes.
February 8th, the White House question, Mr. President, why did you share classified information with your ghostwriter? The President, I did not share classified information. I did not share it. I guarantee I did not.
Lie.
True, is it, Mr. Hur?
That is inconsistent with the findings based on the evidence in my report.
Yes,
Just
it's a
say he
lie.
lied.
It's just what regular people would say, right? Yeah, all right. So the next one. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. That wasn't true either, was it?
That was inconsistent with the findings of
Lie.
the investigation.
Another lie, people
Another
might say,
lie.
right? Because what
Lie.
you put in your report was among the places Mr. Biden's lawyers found classified documents in the garage was a damaged open box. So here's what I'm understanding, right? As Mr. Armstrong laid out, you find in your report that the elements of a federal criminal violation are met, but then you
Thank you.
apply this senile cooperator theory that because Joe Biden cooperated and the elevator doesn't go to the top floor, you don't think you get a conviction. And I actually think you get to the right answer in that. I don't think Biden should have been charged. Don't think Trump should have been charged. But under the senile cooperator theory, isn't it frustrating that Biden continues to go out and lie about the basic facts of the report that lay out a federal criminal violation?
Congressman, I need to disagree with at least one thing that you said, which is that I found that all of the elements were met. One of the elements of the relevant mishandling statute is the intent element. And what my report reflects is my judgment that based on the evidence, I would not be able to prove beyond a
Intent?
reasonable doubt to a jury
Intent?
that intent element had been
Right,
met.
but the reason you have that doubt is the senile cooperator theory. The fact that Joe Biden is
See, they keep bringing her back to the actual and factual, and he dances around it. He doesn't want to answer the question. Just come out and say you didn't find him guilty because he's too damn old.
the White House and says, well, you know, he just blatantly lies. And what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not Biden's lying because he's still so senile, he hasn't read your report, or whether it's a little craftier and a little more devious and perhaps a little more intentional than we might otherwise think. So I also want to go to this Biden Penn Center. Like, did it give concern to you that the Biden Penn Center, where all this classified stuff was being mishandled, was being floated by foreign governments?
Congressman, we were concerned with getting to the bottom of all of the classified
Good morning,
documents
Mama
that were
Mona.
covered during the course of
Yeah, but what bothers me is that the money that was paying for the place where the documents were being inappropriately held, it was the Chinese and it was other foreign countries. Did that play into your analysis? Did you look into the $1 billion in foreign funding sources at the Biden Center at UPenn, for example?
Congressman, we conducted a thorough, impartial, and fair investigation, and we were very, very concerned with getting to the bottom of all the relevant questions relating to the recovered
Sir,
documents.
did you look into the fact that the Chinese were floating the place where this guy was keeping the documents unsecure? Yes or no?
Congressman, to the extent that we identified evidence that was relevant and significant to our investigation, we put it in our report.
Okay, well, it seemed relevant to me, maybe not to you. Another thing that seemed relevant to me is this ghostwriter, right? So the ghostwriter purposefully deletes this evidence
Trying to
that
get rid of
seems
it.
to be like show culpability of Biden's crimes, and you don't charge him. Why did you not charge the
trying to get
ghostwriter with obstructing justice and deleting evidence?
Well, for a number of reasons that are laid out in the report, but in brief, Congressman, yes, when we interviewed the ghostwriter, he did tell us, and I'm trying to get the exact language, that one of the things on his mind, one of the things he was aware of, was that I had been appointed special counsel and was conducting an investigation.
Right, so he didn't, just so everybody knows, the ghostwriter didn't delete the recordings just as a matter of happenstance. Ghostwriter has recordings of
Because
Biden
you
making
knew-
admissions
he knew you was
of
investigating.
crimes. He then learns that you've been appointed.
Yeah.
He then deletes the information
Yeah,
that is
like
the
leaks
evidence,
in
and you don't charge him.
drives, like Hillary
That
did.
is reflected in the report, and one of the reasons.
Like, what does somebody have to do to get charged with obstruction of justice by
Yeah.
you? If like deleting the evidence of crimes doesn't count,
Hillary.
what would meet the standard?
So, Congressman, as we state in the relevant chapter of the report, one of the things that Mr. Zwanitzer did not delete was
Oh, I'm glad I
transcripts
didn't
of the
turn it
recordings
off.
that he had created that included inculpatory evidence relating to Mr. Biden.
Oh, so if you destroy some evidence but not other evidence, that somehow absolves you of the evidence you destroy? Like, here's what I see. Zwanniger should have been charged,
Yeah.
wasn't. Biden and Trump should have been treated equally. They weren't. And
Yeah.
that is the double standard that I think a lot of Americans are concerned about. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
Boom. Who dropped
Gentleman
the
yields
boom?
back. The gentleman from
Back
Tennessee.
to
is
the
recognized for
ignorant
5 minutes.
side. Ball back
Thank you,
to the
Mr. Chairman.
ignorant
Mr.
court.
Hurth, thank you for being here.
Back to
A
the
little
clown
confused
show.
about this hearing. Mr. Raskin laid out the big picture.
Yeah,
what we
the
should be
big picture.
concerned about, but in the more limited picture, Director Mueller had an investigation. He's our most famous recent special prosecutor, and he found sufficient evidence to say there was a connection between Russia and the Trump campaign.
Oh gosh, here we go. Trump.
And it did not, and it supported a criminal prosecution if he were not president. You found there was no evidence to support a criminal prosecution. And the story here is simple. President Biden identified classified documents in his home and other places and told
After he got
archives
busted.
about them. The Independent Department of Justice under Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed you, a former Trump political appointee, as special counsel to fully investigate these circumstances.
Do you notice every time the Democrats get a chance to speak, they're repeating the same old talking points, just the same old talking points, but we keep coming out with actual and factual facts.
And unlike Mr. Barr, he didn't interfere. Did Mr. Garland ask you to change your report at all?
He did not, sir.
Didn't redact a thing.
No, sir.
Like Mr. Barr did, he redacted everything and made the Mueller report.
They really think we're stupid. They think we're stupid. They do.
You did right, and I commend each of you. The Department of Justice is independent and allows the special counsels to investigate and prosecute the facts if it's supported. Joe Biden's actions in handling of classified materials is similar to most other former presidents and vice presidents. The exception is Donald Trump. So let's start with some yes or no questions. Did you receive any pressure from Mr. Garland or his staff to make any specific factual finding or legal conclusion?
No.
Did you receive the resources necessary to carry out your duties?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that you were treated differently with regard to independence or resources than other DOJ special prosecutors?
No.
Based on your experience as special counsel, do you have any reason to believe the Attorney General was improperly directing, pressuring, or interfering with Jack Smith or his work?
I do not have the basis to answer that question.
But your declination, which we treat as thoughtful and apolitical, we should treat prosecutorial decisions by Jack Smith the same way, to the best of your knowledge.
Again, I really do not have the sufficient information.
He said he's not
with respect
answering
to
the
Jack Smith's
question.
investigation to provide any comment on it.
Let me ask you this. If President Biden, in his testimony to you, knew the exact date, January 20, whatever it was, 2009, when he became vice president, and the day when he left being vice president, January the 20th, I guess the first would have been January 20th again, 2009. And then
No, that
January
wouldn't make
20th,
everything okay,
2017.
idiot.
He knew
That
those
would
dates
not make
exactly
everything
right.
okay.
And if he knew the exact date and the instant that Beau
No.
Biden died,
No.
would that have changed your decision
No.
not to bring a prosecution?
Sir, I cannot engage in hypotheticals about what my decision would have been with different facts. What I did was to make a decision based on the facts and the circumstances that I was presented with, and we did identify during our investigation.
But it appears to me, and I think it appears.
No living being should ever eat processed food for every single meal of their life.
To be, you chose not to indict him. It was the difference in the facts in the case and how he dealt with it. The fact is, Mr. Biden sat through 5 hours, and he did an admirable job. And he did an outstanding job in the State of the Union, laying out the case for the future of America.
They're saying he did a good job because he didn't croak.
For democracy
Okay?
around the world, for standing up to the Russians, not bending down to them. That's what's important. Not if you can be like on the $64,000 question, assuming it was legit, and answering every single question correctly. That's not what you need to be president. To be president, you need to have values. You need to have an understanding of what values America has and needs
he
to
doesn't.
maintain
Joe
to
Biden
keep
doesn't
the
have
world
any of
safe and
those.
peaceful. That's dealing with Ukraine. That's dealing.
Joe Biden doesn't have anything of what this man is talking about. So what are you talking about?
And understanding Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid are important institutions that help seniors, not senile people. I mean, I really object to that comment. People see he's not. Nobody suggests he's senile, and that's disrespectful of senior people with any kind of memory disability. Lots of seniors have memory disability, but they're not senile, and to do such was shameful. Joe Biden,
You're
is
senile.
a competent, good president who knows American values.
Look, you can't even talk.
Gentleman's time has expired.
You
Gentleman
can't
yields
even
back.
talk.
Gentleman from California.
Thanks, Chairman.
Sure, I'd like to start off by thanking you for a year of hard work and a
Back
comprehensive
to some
report.
common sense.
I'm going to
Let's get
try
to the common
not to
sense side.
provide testimony, as some people on both sides are, or provide conclusions, but I do have some questions that lead me to ask you for conclusions. One question is, were there notes of the President of the United States that dated back to when he was a senator that contained classified information?
Among the documents that were recovered during our investigation were marked classified documents that dated back to when Mr. Biden was a senator.
When he was in his 30s, 40s, 50s.
And he
I
shouldn't
believe
have had
that's
it.
correct.
Mama Mo, you're totally right.
Were there documents from the time that he was vice president?
Yes.
And he shouldn't have had it.
Okay. So there's been a lot to do about, senility, non-senility, poor memory, and so on. But let's just go through something that you deal with as a prosecutor every day. You first start off with a set of initial evidence that indicates there may have been a crime. Is that right? By the time it gets to you, usually you have some evidence that there may have been a crime.
I think that is fair, yes.
Okay, and in this case, at some point during this investigation where the elements of the crime, including willfulness, were put before you and you reached a personal conclusion that either there was likely guilt or not. Is that correct? Not provable, not in front of a jury, just personal, because you have to make that decision as part of the case, correct?
Correct. And I would say I approach the task as I have been trained to as a prosecutor, which is as on an iterative basis. The investigation is always uncovering new evidence that you
forget the hyperbole.
So both before, during, and at the end, did you reach a conclusion, notwithstanding his current mental state of being an elderly man with a poor memory and so on, that he did in fact deliberately take documents and held them from back when he was a senator, and we're talking about your personal, not that you could prove it, but personally, did you see a pattern that goes all the way back to him being a senator of taking documents, making notes, and taking them and holding them personally?
Congressman, I viewed my task as a prosecutor in this matter to determine what I believe.
Answer the question.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm not trying to take away from your conclusion. Some others are debating the conclusion. I'm not debating the conclusion. I just want to go through one element that I think is important. Look, you've prosecuted people in the past and failed to get a conviction. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, you're not a 1,000 perfect batting average. Okay.
I can't say that.
Yeah. So you went into cases thinking that you would succeed and you didn't. One might say you probably declined to prosecute ones that you might have either gotten a conviction or gotten a plea on. Would you say that's fair to say over your long career?
I think that's fair because I take the rules as set forth in the Justice Manual seriously.
However, I'm going to presume that you would never prosecute someone you thought was outright innocent.
Correct.
In this case, did you reach a conclusion that this man was outright innocent?
That conclusion is not reflected in my report, sir.
Right. So you did not reach that conclusion, or it would have been in your report.
I viewed my task of explaining my decision
He
to the
won't
Attorney
answer
General
the
as being
question.
based on my judgment and my assessment of the evidence. Would a conviction at trial be the probable outcome? And that's what's
And I just want to make sure the record is complete in that, because I think it's extremely important. You did not reach an idea that he had committed no wrong. You reached a conclusion that you would not prevail at trial and therefore did not take it forward. Is that correct?
correct, Congressman.
Okay. I just want to go through one or two little, these are housekeeping almost. The documents that the president, then vice president took, which included his own notes, to your knowledge, aren't those covered by the Freedom of Information Act? Potentially.
I honestly do not know, Congressman.
Aren't they covered by the Presidential Records Act, as every note and every text of the president, the vice president, and members of the cabinet are covered?
I think different folks would have different views on whether they're covered by the PRA, Congressman.
But isn't it true that he left office leaving no copies of that behind, and that alone was inconsistent with an open and transparent individual, correct?
I'm not aware of copies of those materials being left behind, Congressman.
Okay, I want to thank you, and Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the extra few seconds. I yield
That's
back.
it. That's all. That's all we need. That's all we need to hit them with the actual and the factual. And now back to the clown show.
Distinguished career, earning your law degree from Stanford University.
I don't know how long I'm gonna bring the clown show to you. I wish I could just cut and just only bring the actual and factual. But you gotta see the whole thing.
Correct.
To understand in
Then you
context.
went on to clerk for Judge
How foolish
Kaczynski
these
of the
people
Ninth
look.
Circuit, correct?
Yes, sir.
After that, you ascended to a clerkship with then Chief Justice William Rehnquist on the United States Supreme Court, correct?
Correct.
And then you later joined the Daddy Bush Department of Justice as a special assistant to known Federalist Society member and now FBI Director Christopher Wray. Isn't that correct?
I did spend some time working for former Assistant Attorney General Christopher Wray.
And you later joined the Trump Justice Department as the Principal Associate
There goes
Deputy
Trump.
Attorney General, working as the right-hand man for another known Federalist Society member, Rod Rosenstein. Isn't that correct?
I served as Mr. Rosenstein's principal deputy.
And then Donald Trump appointed you to serve as U.S. Attorney for the
Donald
District
Trump.
of Maryland. Is that correct?
President Trump nominated me to serve in that position, and I was
you were
unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate.
That's correct. And thereafter, Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed you to serve as special counsel
All
for the
right,
United
so
States Department of
that's
Justice
it for morning
to
coffee
conduct a
today.
full and thorough
If
investigation
y'all want to
of
see the
certain
rest of
matters
this,
to determine whether or not Joseph.
if y'all want to see the rest of this clown show in its entirety, y'all go ahead, go over to YouTube. I don't know who's showing it right now, depending on what network you go to. But I know, as for me and the Patriots Lab, for now, the clown show is over. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, ring that bell so you can get those instant notifications. It's wild. It's wild. As you can see, no questions are being answered by Mr. Hur. He's actually, though, by not answering the questions, he's answering them in a roundabout way. We see what the Democrats are doing. They're going off of the same script, the same playbook. Nothing is actual and factual. They're always trying to compare it to Trump, but we see there's no comparison. So it's going to be a mystery how they wiggle out of this. Let me go ahead and send Mama Mona the link because I know she has something to say about this morning. Hold on, Mama Mona. I will get the link sent out to you so we can go ahead and we'll go ahead and break this down real quick. Let me send Mama Mona a link up here so we can go ahead and break this down and see what the hell is really going on. Y'all like, share, subscribe, ring that bell so y'all can get those instant notifications. Oh God, it's a mad, mad world out there. It's a mad, mad world this morning. The link is coming, Mama Mona. I got a fresh cup of coffee waiting for you. Let's see what Mama Mona has to say this morning. Oh my goodness. We have her. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning. Hey, the thing is I've been posting it to you about this here movie, The Plan. Okay. This here movie, The Plan, I sent you the link. I put it on the chat, but I also sent it to you in Messenger.
Okay.
It's going to explain a whole lot. It uncovers everything. And then it tells you even the plan. We have to fix it. We can fix it.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you people believe in the Q, okay, which is the group of people, okay? Smart, intelligent, good researchers, okay? But whether you do or not, it goes into 6 little parts that explains the whole thing from beginning to end, the whole cabal plan, and how we have figured out how to fix it, okay? And what we got to do. It's wonderful. You need to watch it, share it. And at the very end, there's a video done by Donald J. Trump that, honey, brought tears to my eyes, raised the hair on the back of my neck, and made me so proud to have that man running and representing us. That's all I got to say about it, because I want you to watch it. It's important.
Well, I will, and I've been following Q for a couple of years, and I'll see what they have to say. But I've also learned from following a lot of people that at the end of the day, it's just their opinions, because nobody's God. I mean, we can all lay out our different scenarios.
I got that. This is not done by Dave, okay? This isn't like the X-22 report or nothing. This is an actual movie that takes you step by step through how we got to where we are and what really is under the table.
Right.
That the black ops, okay, are revealed. And now that they are revealed, the plan is afoot. And you got to see it. It's wonderful. It's so good. It made me cry that I've been in this battle all this time, believing and thinking that, man, I can't believe that the people of this country ain't, we got too many people in this country that love it compared to those that hate it. I mean, we're probably 1,000,000 to 1, really. But when you see this thing, it is so good. Anyhow, I got it from Dennis Rhodes, sent it to me, and of course I sent it out everywhere after I watched it. But I watched it twice, and I'm getting ready to watch it a third time, because I'm afraid I might have missed something really important.
Well, I don't know. I'll go ahead and peep.
Stay skeptic. I love you being skeptic, because that's what makes you get to the actual and the factual. Okay.
Well, I take a little bit from everybody. I take a little bit from everybody.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's the way it should be. We're called a diversity country. We are absolutely the most diverse country in the world, because you can't go anyplace else and become a German or a Frenchman or a Switzerland person. You can only come to America and become an American, but do it legal.
Good morning, Cricket Day. Well, good afternoon now, depending on where you are. Well, no, it is only 11:45 a.m., so it is morning time technically. But yeah, Mama, I can't believe well, first of all, I got to give the Democrats credit for being able to come out and put on the performance that they're putting on, because I'll tell you what, it's not, I don't know.
I've been in acting school, okay, all my life, all right? And I'm going to tell you what, to hold that kind of an expression on your face you've got to kind of wholeheartedly believe that you're right. And that's the problem. They have been told the lie so many times. Like kind of like that pedophile lover, okay? Tells you he loves you, 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 till you begin to believe that he really, really does. And the way that he shows it is by beating on you.
And
okay?
but then again, her is really to blame. He's really part of the problem, because he just needs to come out and say, listen, he's guilty, but I didn't charge him because I thought he was too old, and I didn't think I would get a conviction. Just leave it at that. But they try to get they try to confuse the American people.
You charge him, you charge him,
and let the judge and jury decide.
Breathing.
Let the
to
judge and jury
prosecute
decide.
him. That's what happens when Hurd became was appointed special counsel. He was basically probably rightly informed by the mob, the deep state, the cabal, that you better not find anything and you better not charge him. If you charge him, you won't be breathing.
The man, and
you got to understand that because of the way he avoids the answers.
Well, he
already
laid out the actual and the factual by stating he willfully and knowingly retained this information. So it can't be both, bro. It can't be both. And
he's opting not to prosecute. It will cost him his life if he does.
But see,
step into his shoes. He laid out all the evidence so somebody else can choose to prosecute it.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah,
he's going to lose his life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on that point, you are right. Maybe that's what his intentions possibly could have been. Let me just lay out the actual and factual and step the hell aside.
Same thing James Comey did with Hillary.
Yeah. Yeah, they lay out the actual and factual. Lay out the and I knew it was going to go the way where they was going to try to put Trump on trial, but see, they cannot. And I don't even think MSNBC and CNN and them were showing this shit. See, because they can't show common sense. They can't show common sense. The man has committed high crime misdemeanors and treason, and he is not going to be prosecuted for it. And see, they did the most important thing. They are prosecuting Donald Trump for the same exact thing. Nothing different. They try to spin it in a different way. But the important thing is, Mama Mona, and you say it more than none of them, other than Trump, had immunity under the Presidential Records Act. None of them. And they try to gloss over it like it's nothing. Why did old boy...
From an illegal to an immigrant.
Hey.
That's what it is. Figure it out.
Hey, didn't they just say the ghostwriter tried to get rid of the evidence? Why
the ghostwriter deleted the evidence? He did delete it.
No, it got caught in the recycle. They caught him. They caught it in the recycle. So if you know, but like they said, he didn't do that until after he found out Robert Hur was investigating Joe Biden. He didn't want to have nothing to do with that shit. See, America. I ain't even gonna get pissed off this morning.
You know what?
I ain't even gonna get pissed off.
Honey, once you watch this movie I just sent you, you're gonna go.
I'm done.
Right?
I'm done watching it because only God knows.
Now do watch it. It's not a prediction. It's evidence from the past. All the evidence that we have collected on the deep state and how we are going to take them down. They're all going.
Well,
they can hold all their hearings that they want.
Yeah, I know they're going. And I got to watch it to see exactly how they're going then.
Yes.
But this is madness. This is madness. Hello, Jane O'Malley.
In the movie, they finally put out all of the evidence that their operatives have gathered over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Clear back to old man Bush, Bush, Clinton, Obama, the whole 9 yards. They wrapped up all the evidence and put it all together in a public forum.
But see, this is
full
the thing.
Transparency.
This is the thing. I don't want to see no more corruptness. I want to see accountability, and I don't want to hear who's going to do it.
That's why.
Mama Mona.
That's
Mama
why
Mo.
you have to watch it till the end.
Mama
Because
Mo.
it requires our participation.
Well, I say that every day. So I'll wait. I'll wait for the day the American people decide to do what they're gonna do. I ain't watching somebody tell me American people gonna rise up in 2025 and all that shit. I ain't listening to that shit. When God says it's gonna happen, that's when it's gonna happen. I watched too many documentaries. I seen too much evidence. I seen too much of the bullshit. I don't care no more.
I dare you to read it, to watch it, and come back and debate it with me.
I'm not gonna debate it because it's not gonna change my mind on waiting on God to make this outcome work.
Honey,
I don't need to see no more evidence.
I think it is a God thing. When you see it, this is why you're going to like it so much. It is a God-like thing.
Okay.
I promise you.
I'm gonna take your word for it.
I promise you. It is good against evil.
Well, yeah, it is. It is.
It is a God-like thing that's happening. And when you see it, it's happening all over the world. They have uncovered evidence. Oh, honey, heads are going to roll.
Okay, see, now right there. That's all I'm waiting for. I don't want to see no more of evidence because you know what? This shit goes back 75 years. They got hundreds of years of corruptness leading up to this point. I don't care about any of that. I want to see the day when people are held accountable. That's all I care about.
Then fast forward it to part 6, the plan.
Can't nobody predict it. No, can't.
No,
the
plan. This is a plan. It's a military plan, but it's a plan.
I've heard it's a plan years ago. I heard this was the big setup for the Great Reset years ago. I've been following this for almost 8 years now about the plan. I know about the plan. I want to see the action now. I already know this is part of the Great Reset, part of the Great Global Takedown.
We're not talking that. We're not talking that. We're talking about how this person became a mobster and how this person by name influenced this one. And I'm telling you what, they talk about, they've got it all. They put out all the evidence on Hillary, all the evidence on Clinton.
We already know, Mama Mona.
Do you really know the evidence?
Yes, we know how corrupt. See, this is the thing.
We understand that they're corrupt. I just didn't understand how they was going to pull all the evidence together to make the American people wake up and see what's really happening.
But see, even when the American people wake up, I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen. How much? See, it's like this is what it's like. It's like you rob a bank. They find out you robbed the bank. The bank says $3.5 million is stolen. They come to your house. They only find $1.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
They turn around and say, we can't lock them up because we didn't find $3.5 million.
I get it. I get it.
Mama, these people are evil. They've been doing this thing for decades.
Yes,
so,
I just didn't quite.
I don't need to see.
I personally needed it.
Listen, I don't need to hear.
I personally needed a visual explanation of actual pictures, videos, undercover stuff that was taken.
All that tapes when Benghazi went down and Hillary Clinton ignored the phone calls from them and got all of that stuff. All of that and beyond. I'm done seeing.
And when they put it, for me, as a layman, for me, I wanted to see it explained to me in the actual and factual evidence. I didn't want to hear the spin. I didn't want to listen to any of the prefix. I didn't want to listen to any of the pretense. Okay? Prove to me that you are actually taking these steps necessary to bring this mob
Mama
tyranny
Mona,
to
Mona.
erase it.
The only thing they are doing, and this is actual and factual, the only thing they are doing is continuing to gather evidence. I don't care how much evidence you show us. If a stolen election, if the setup of a president, if the treason and high crimes and misdemeanors and the open borders of another president doesn't show you, I don't care about the 50 years of corruptness that you've accumulated on video, audio, and with pictures. That shit ain't gonna change your mind.
That's not what I'm talking about. So you got a wrong impression.
No,
all the way.
You needed
All
something
the
to
way.
get. You needed something to give you closure to help
I
you
know.
really see it. I
No,
knew this
because
was out
I
there.
couldn't understand why it was taking so long. And then I realized that, yeah, we've got all the evidence you could possibly need to have on the ones here in the United States. Okay. But we needed to gather the evidence on the ones in Ukraine, the ones in China.
We've been
the
had
ones
that,
in-
Mama
we
Mona.
now have it all
Mama Mona,
together.
we had Mama Mona. We had all of the bio lab. Mama Mona, I've been doing this a long time. We've had the bio labs underground in Ukraine for years. We've known what the Vatican has been doing over in Italy. That's why the whole government over there toppled 3 years ago. People don't even know about that. There have been governments that have been toppled for the new day, and people don't even know about any of that. We know that, well, not everybody knows.
That's what this movie puts out there for people
well, I
to
already
know
know
about
that. I already know all of that stuff, and other people
Yeah,
have
but
already
when you
known
put it, you know it. But how many millions of others do not? One thing about this movie, it's entertaining enough that
there it
people
is.
will watch it, and it's gathered together, so they're not having to research it from here and pick it from here and pick it from here and pick
Okay,
it from
so-
here. It's
so
all
let's-
collaborated
So what
into
we have to do, is just say this is a documentary revealing all of the information of their bad deeds. We can't
Yes.
say this is a documentary showing how this is going to end, because nobody knows how it's going to end.
This documentary shows all their bad deeds from all over the world.
Yeah. See, a lot of people already know that. I know people that informed me about it because I didn't know. There are people that knew about this shit back to Kennedy, why Kennedy was assassinated, the real reason, and things of that nature. So I know about all of this, and I'm glad you're finally having an opportunity to know the real raw dog about this.
When they put this together, they put this together so it shows all their dirty, nasty laundry skeletons, all of it from around the world. Okay. And now we share that out. That's where we need our participation. We share that out so that people who do not know, like you and me, that's been involved in this for my lifetime for me, okay, can be seen by something people will actually sit down and watch.
But see,
I think it's great. I love it. I think this presenting
it is, but that's all it is. It's just that, and I want to make sure I keep it in perspective.
Yes,
it's a documentary that informs people of all of the corruptness and the evilness, not just here in the world, but the tentacles that reach out into the world. A lot of people don't understand, and I started doing this about 6 years ago, but there are 5 families that run this country. DC is part of it, the Vatican, you got the European Union, you got the Asian Pacific. It's 5. And when I used to follow certain people, X22 and stuff like that, when I first started out, those are the people that got me interested in who really runs the world.
No, they own every corporation there is.
Yeah, and we
every
know
bank. Every pharmaceutical, they own all the pharmaceuticals, they own all of the oil stocks, they own all of the grocery Kroger's and Safeway and Walmart, they own it all. And every time, yeah, it's huge.
But I'll just say this and keep it at this. If people aren't going to stand up for what they literally experiencing in their life right now, firsthand experiences, they're damn sure not going to stand up for what happened in history because they haven't experienced it. It doesn't touch them the same way. Only thing it's going to do is give them more fucked up information to have. So, if you ain't going to stand up for a stolen election,
but
if you ain't going to stand up, like I said,
but maybe the fact that the way it's laid out, believe me, you're going to love the way that the producers did it, and I don't think Trump would have supported it so much. It's been supported. In fact, he's on the end of this video. He gives the most magnificent speech of patriotism and humanity that I have ever heard him give. And he does it on the end of this video movie.
Are you talking about Trump?
Yes. I'm talking about Donald J. Trump.
That speech, it had the music in the background. And what people don't understand, that is the speech that he gave the other night. Me and my wife sat in bed. This man has never given a speech like this before. It was so quiet in that place. Me and my wife said, is there even anybody in the audience? He had the melodramatic patriot music playing in the background, and the man gave a speech that will live on for hundreds of years. Like we sit back and we listen.
Martin Luther King speech.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, how we listen to these Abraham Lincoln, Martin, and they got the soloist music in the background. He spoke for 37 minutes, looking into the teleprompter from left to right with not a grin on his face, talking American pride, American strength, Americans' leadership. That I never heard a speech like that. Never from him.
No greater speech has ever been given. I was
he had hair standing up on my neck.
When I got it, when I got to the end of the movie, and that was how the movie ended. So it's just been released. Okay, it's brand new. Yeah. But once I got to that part of it and knew that I could play it over and over and over again, I listened to it 3 times. Oh my God, that speech is so on point and so eloquently given and so inspirational. And if people can't get behind this man after that speech, I don't know what. Anyway, yes. And it was with his blessing that he released this here video. It's part of his campaign to let everybody know just how corrupt these people are and what he's fighting. And when he becomes president, what his plan is.
Well, see, Donald Trump, he knows the wind's at his back. He knows he has the American. See, this is the thing. He knows he has the American people with him. That's without a shadow of a doubt. See, I'm not worried about the mindset that the American people, majority of American people,
I ain't either.
Let me finish. I'm not concerned with the mindset of the American people that they are now awake and they see and they hate and they don't like it no more. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is them putting their frustrations into action. Everybody's pissed off, but there are still only the few that are willing to say, you know what, I'm pissed off and I'm not just going to voice my frustrations. I'm going to stand up and do something about it. That's the problem. That's the problem. Everybody's pissed off. You got some areas that are willing to finally say, you know what, enough is enough.
Like
We're
the guy
done.
said, I don't know who quoted it, but it's a quote I heard. It says, "A love, there is a massive love for country and a hate for government, and those two things are very dangerous when put together."
They are. But
I gotta go. I got somebody here to help me with my yard.
go do your yard. I gotta go too. Hey, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate Mama Mo for getting in on the last end. Y'all make sure, I'm gonna throw those up on the page. Y'all make sure y'all go to Mona Moments and see what we was talking about. I don't need to waste any more time watching any more documentaries to know the government is out of control. The question is, what are we as the people going to do to put an end to it? David Navarre, good morning. Boom! And that is the great way to end the show. Great way to end the show. We don't need to see no more bullshit. We already know what is the American people going to do about it. That's what I'm talking about. Peace and love. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, having a couple of cups of coffee. You already know. In the meantime, in between time, I will see you Wednesday, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you be there. Make sure you share it, like it, smash it, and get those notifications. This is your man. I'm out.